Hey everybody and welcome. Today is June 9th, 2018. And today we're going to bring Zach Hubbard on just in a second here, as soon as I get my Skype up and running. Going to talk about some news by the numbers for the week of June 2nd through June 9th. We're going to run down the top 4 news stories, as well as a good chunk of other news. All right. And we're bringing on Zach. Zach, can you hear me? How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I can hear you.
All right, excellent. Sorry for waking you up this morning, but glad to have you on, man.
That's okay. Yeah. What's
So,
going on?
well, it's been a pretty busy news week. We got a lot of sports to talk about as well, which I was hoping that was something you could kind of help me, talk about. We had the Stanley Cup Finals wrap up a couple nights ago, and then
Right.
last night we had the conclusion of the NBA Finals in a 4-game sweep by the Golden State Warriors over the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we're going to jump a little out of order on the slides today, but because Zach, you only got about an hour or so to be with us today. So again, thanks for making time, and we'll jump ahead to the Belmont Stakes. This is something you said you wanted to cover on the Gematria effect this week, and we didn't get a chance to do that. So, if there's anything regarding the Belmont that you want to talk about, please feel free to fire away.
Yeah, let me look at my notes again. I know that this year is the 144th edition of them having the opportunity for there to be a triple crown. So this year, the 144th time it's possible, the time that they've kept track of the stat. And in Gematria, triple crown equals 144. That's when you flip the alphabetic order around, making Z1 and counting up to A is 26. Um, what else is there? There's another big thing. Oh, that's right. The horse that has the chance to win the Triple Crown, Justify, from the day he was born, which was March 28th, 2015, to the day of the Belmont Stakes, where if he wins it, he'll get the Triple Crown. That's exactly 167 weeks on the nose, and 167 is the 39th prime, and Belmont Stakes has the Gematria of 39. And I feel like there's one other riddle I'm not thinking of off the top of my. Oh yeah, I know what it is. If this horse wins, it'll become the 13th horse all time to win the Triple Crown, and it has 4 to 5 odds to win it. Meaning, if you bet, I think 40, you win 50. I'm not mistaken, or it could be the other way around. I'm half asleep still, but that 4 to 5 thing is a lot like 45, and if you write out 13, it sums to 45 in 2 of the base ciphers. And
Yep.
This relationship's not. I mean, this is a pretty good. If I was going to bet on this horse race, I would bet on Justify to win and win the Triple Crown.
Same.
But it's not as much to me. It's not as much of a lock as the American Pharoah Triple Crown, which I saw even before any of the races took place, or before we even knew it was American Pharoah. I said a year before that happened that there would be a Triple Crown that year, because it would be 37 years since the last Triple Crown, and 37 was the 12th prime, and American Pharoah became the 12th horse to win the Triple Crown 37 years after the 11th horse became the Triple Crown. But this looks pretty good too, this riddle, and I think it's going to happen here. Justify, the 13th Triple Crown winner. We just saw LeBron James become 1-3 in the finals against the Warriors, and
That's right.
all of those championships have had a lot to do with 13, been a huge number, recurring number, and usually this world of sports, it's all scripted together, so I think we'll see the Triple Crown.
So I totally agree. As someone who doesn't really bet on sports myself, this is one where I would. And they gave you really poor odds, so you were right about those. It's 4 to 5 odds, which means you got to put down $50 if you want to win 40.
There we go, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of extreme, right? I mean, you have, I think it's 12 or 13 horses in this race. and there's a horse that's so heavily favored over the others that you're better off taking it against the field, which is kind of surprising. We wonder if these horse races are rigged, and certainly it looks like they are.
Oh, I don't wonder at all.
Yeah,
I know
well,
they're rigged.
100%.
Yeah,
And, the numbers go
I
to
forget
show
what
this
race
every
it was. It was
time.
like 2 years ago. I guaranteed a horse was going to win, and it did win. But what was funny is before the race ran, they took forever because they could not get that horse to gate. And I'm pretty sure it's because they got the horse like all jacked up on stimulants or something.
Okay.
But
That could
yeah, that
be.
horse blew away the competition.
So here's what I see for this year's Belmont. To me, this looks like a pie ritual. Today, June 9th, the date written 6/9. In the language of Jewish Gematria, pi equals 69. And also in Jewish, 3.14, which is the first three digits of pi, when you write this out, you get a value of 888. And I bring this up because Bob Baffert, who is Justify's trainer, on the date today, he is 23,888 days old. And after Justify won the Preakness, they gave us a headline that sums to 888 in reverse ordinal. And you can see right there, the reverse alphabetic order, they gave us this 888 headline. And there's a lot more that goes into this. So the name Justify, the horse, right? We're talking in prime numbers, Justify equals 373. And this is the same as horse racing in Jewish Gematria, 373. And today, the date of the Belmont, when Justify can win the Triple Crown, he's exactly 3 years and 73 days old.
Huh.
So he's at the perfect date. Now,
That's the 74th prime too, isn't it?
absolutely. And trainer Bob Baffert is 7 months, 4 days before his birthday today.
So the other thing that I always look at in these horse races, which I haven't done this time, just because I've been short on time, is the jockey. The jockey's always perfectly synced up with it too.
Yep.
So
And
you got to look at that jockey for Justify.
That's 100% the case here. So think about today's date, 69, right? And these rituals are all about time. Well, the keeper of time is Saturn. And in the reverse alphabetic order, Saturn equals 69. However, in the ordinal method, Saturn equals 93. The jockey, Mike Smith, today will be 9 months and 30 days before his birthday. This also comes out to 303 days, and in Satanic Gematria, Saturn sums to 303 in that method. And then you have the trainer, Robert A. Bob Baffert. His name sums to 303 in the reverse order, and today has a numerology of 33. 6 plus 9 plus 18. So there's definitely intent here in the placement of the trainer, the jockey. No doubt about it. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much most of what I laid out a couple weeks ago. And again, to me, it seems like coding for a Triple Crown champion, 100%. And those 4 to 5 odds, man, you're right. This would be the 13th horse. 13 equals 45. That's a huge number this week.
The other thing that's jumping out at me is the age of this jockey. I just looked it up real quick. He's 52 years old. That's the number in sports. It's why I said 2 weeks ago on the radio show that I expect there to be a sweep in these finals and probably the Cavs getting swept because it would be LeBron's 239th playoff game, the 52nd prime, and we've seen these numbers again and again in the world of sports. So, yeah, just the more I look, the more things seem favorable for Justify.
Yeah, 52 has been the big number, of course, Super Bowl 52. And just this past week, we had more drama between Trump and the Eagles. And we can talk about that story in a little while, too. And, that's with that brought back into the public conscience. Now we have another 52 in a big sports riddle, possibly another Triple Crown champion. Bob Baffert,
Right.
by the way, the trainer, he was born on January 13th, which is the 13th day of the year on top of that.
Right.
So
Right. That's a big one right there.
yeah, and
Do you know which Belmont Stakes this is? Do you know if this is
this year's Belmont Stakes, that's a good question.
It's okay. It's not that important. But yeah,
It'll
I
be
just
the
like to look it up.
150th, so they're 6 years ahead of the Derby.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting, though, 150.
Well, that so right away, just what I'm thinking is Illuminati has Gematria of 150, and we know about the Bavarian Illuminati and 13. So that's also important right there.
Sure. We'll talk about 150 and 15 more as this
And,
podcast goes on.
and speaking of Illuminati, it does also have Gematria of 69 in the base cipher, just like 150. So what a day for a 13 tribute. The more I think about it. And you know what? With regards to Saturn being 69, like you brought up earlier, 13's the sixth prime, Saturn's the sixth planet. So, yeah, just the more I think about it, the more it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And Illuminati, 13 families, founded the same year as the United States, which was founded with 13 colonies. So, a
Right,
lot of connections all around.
right.
All right, so let's jump to the NBA Finals. I saw you had a post on this just
From the middle
yesterday.
of the night?
I didn't put anything together on the finals. I didn't really. The only thing I noticed about this, and then I'll give you the reins on this, Zach, if you want. When they pulled LeBron James out of the game last night, they were down by 25 points, and I noticed the score was 102 to 77 when they pulled him out, and
Right.
there were 4:03 on the clock. And the number 102, we see this stamped on black athletes like infinitely. The word nigger equals 102 in the reverse alphabetic order. And then Christ equals 77. And the reason this is significant is because LeBron's full name, LeBron Raymond James, shares Gematria with Jesus Christ. LeBron Raymond James, 1339, English extended. Jesus Christ, 1339 in trigonal Gematria. So it was interesting, too, because with 4 minutes and 3 seconds on the clock, you have 243 seconds, 243, 3 to the fifth power, King James equals 35. And that's an important number, too, 13 times 31, but won't get too deep into that. Let me think. Yeah, so that was all I noticed on that. I just thought, man, they even pulled him out with the right time on the clock and everything.
Sure. So what I noticed about I did okay. So when I came home last night, which was four something in the morning, I turned on ESPN. What they were showing was the highlights of the game, and I saw that score too, 77 to 102. So in addition to what you talked about, if you add those numbers together, that's 179, which is the 41st prime. And the word king with the alphabetic order is 41. We know the ritual is all about King James. And King James became a king at 13 months of age. LeBron won the championship for the Cavs in his 13th season. Now he's 1-3 against the Warriors. And of course, 41 is the 13th prime as well. So 179, the 41st prime, 41, the 13th prime. So I look at that as another King 13 tribute. Plus what you just said. What I wrote up before the game is why I expected the sweep to happen. Yesterday's date, 6/8. If you write out sweep with just the alphabetic order, S is 19, W is 20. Again and again, the Warriors and 108. Golden State Warriors equals 108. They won last night with 108 points. The word geometry with the alphabetic order and the reverse alphabetic order, 108. So you got Steph Curry, the star player on Pi Day. You got the geometry ritual. This past offseason, Steph Curry signed his record contract at the time, 108 days after his birthday. And so there it is again. I mean, that's what I love about this book that I put out and the fact that I dated it, because if you just pay attention to everything that's happened in the world since then, sports, news, elections, it's just the same recurring patterns. It's just so repetitive. And the first time the Warriors and Cavs played in the finals, the Warriors won with 108 points. That was 4 years ago. This will probably be the last time the Warriors and Cavs meet in the playoffs, and begins and ends with 108. Geometry. And then, of course, the Cavs went down with 85 points. If you write out basketball with the alphabetic order, it equals 85. If you write out basketball in reverse reduction, it sums to 68, just like mathematics, just like the date. So we got this geometry tribute, we got this mathematics tribute, and that's what it is. It's all by the numbers. those are the main things. I noticed the Cavs starters scored a lowly 55 points. That's really bad for a starting five.
Yeah.
King James equals 55. LeBron did fall to 3-6 when Dwayne. My first prediction for this NBA season, which I did end up changing, but my first prediction I should have stuck with. When Dwayne Wade joined the Cavs at the beginning of this season, I said LeBron is going to lose in the finals. He'll be 3-6, just like how him and Wade were 3-6 in Miami. And of course, 3-6 is a lot like 36. If you add 1 through 36 together, you get 666. 666 is the 36th triangular number, and that matters because the NBA Finals equals 666, basketball game 666, and of course LeBron equals 66, LeBron James equals 66, and the word king in Jewish gematria equals 66. Don't forget number of the beast equals 66, and 666 is taught about in Revelation, the 66th book of the Bible. Um, the other thing that jumped out at me is they were emphasizing last night how this was a no player who's won the MVP before in the finals has ever lost 6 finals. They were emphasizing that 666 666. If you write out six as a word, it has Gematria 52, and this also happened on a date with 52 numerology, June 8th, 2018. Those are the main things. I should have measured from Steph Curry and LeBron James's birthday. I'm sure there's even more there. Did LeBron score 23? Oh, yeah, LeBron also scored 23, losing by 23. It's just so stupid. Sweep equals 23 on his 23rd week of being 33.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
a
a
good
joke.
one.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I noticed too is the Warriors built around this whole pie ritual. Last year they went 16-1 in the playoffs. Phi,
Right.
the golden ratio 1.61. They got David West with the Phi tattoo on his arm that year. Well,
Right. I wrote about that actually 2 days ago. I wrote about how that connected these finals with the sweep as well. And that's what it was from LeBron's birth. I did measure 2 days ago. I forget. From LeBron's birthday to the sweep yesterday was 161 days. Phi. And also just think about Phi in terms of the abbreviation in sports, which is the Philly abbreviation.
right.
The Warriors originally from Philly, the biblical name. So yeah.
So their
Yeah.
main star, Steph Curry, born on March 14th, 1988, which was the original Pi Day,
The first year it was celebrated. Yeah.
the very first year. And I noticed that his teammate Clay Alexander Thompson, in the reverse alphabetic order, his name equals 314 as well.
Oh, go
In
figure. And both of them are sons of former basketball players. So
Yep. And that's another thing when you look at this. Like, you start to realize these leagues are starting to operate like our government, where it's just the sons of these athletes getting in.
it's
And
not. It's
these
all
people
of
don't look the
entertainment. The
most
whole world
athletic
is
of
kings and
everybody on
queens,
the court.
essentially. That's the world. It's kings and queens.
Right.
So yeah.
So I apologize on YouTube. I scheduled an event this morning, and I guess I don't know if I grabbed the right stream key or whatever, so I'm streaming using a wrong thumbnail or something, but the podcast has been up this whole time, so for anyone who was just watching the YouTube stream, I'll cover the stuff on the Belmont at the end of the show as well. We only got Zach for about an hour today, so we're just going to fire through a little bit more of the news here. So in addition to the NBA Finals wrapping up, we also had the Stanley Cup, a 5-game series with the Washington Capitals winning their first championship in franchise history over the expansion Vegas Golden Knights. And so it's strange enough that in basketball we're always being fed these, the sons of these former stars who just happen to be the greatest players of all time. And now we're supposed to believe that an expansion team made the Stanley Cup Finals in the first year. And I watched a couple of these games in the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's like watching them. It's hard for me to understand how these games are rigged, but I don't have any doubt they are. And there was something very, very interesting that happened with the clock at the end of this game that I want to talk about as well. But Zach, if you have anything on the Stanley Cup game, I'd like to hear that. Otherwise, we
Oh
can talk about the
yeah.
clock.
Oh yeah. So there's what I pointed out before the NBA Finals game yesterday is I said, look, it'll be perfect for the basketball championship to end on June 8th because basketball equals 68. Just like how the hockey championship ended on 6-7, because when you write out hockey with the alphabetic order, sums to 67. H is 8, O is 15, C is 3, K is 11, E is 5, Y is 25, hockey 67, June 7th. In the reduction method, Washington Capitals equals 76. And June 7th can also be expressed 7/6. But going back to hockey in 67, with regards to this being the Washington Capitals, named after George Washington also died at age 67.
Mm.
And I don't think that's any coincidence. The Capitals won it 4-3. D is 4, C is 3. DC 43. If I'm not mistaken, Las Vegas, Nevada in reduction gematria is also 43. The team that went down in the ritual
Yep.
from Las Vegas, of course. This also was the 101st NHL hockey season. We know about the 10-1 Vegas shooting where 101 was the number. And lo and behold, in their inaugural season, the Vegas team goes all the way to the championship and loses to the Capitals, who were in their 44th season. As we know, 44 is the big shooting number. And as we also know, these shootings, these false flags, are a federal agenda. Of course, the federal government headquartered in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So those were the main notes. I also looked at the star player for the Capitals real quick, and I noticed his full name sums to 147. Another huge number in D.C. Freemason equals 147. So does conspiracy. There's 147 windows on the White House, and not arbitrarily. U.S. president equals 147. So does president of the United States. Think about Trump and Russia, the Capitals star player Ovechkin. He's Russian.
That is funny that there's so much in the news going on about Russia, and finally, after a good decade of being in the league, the NHL's top Russian superstar now winning a Stanley Cup. That's a good note. Nice parallel.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely part of the riddle. And there's a few other things that are interesting, but I mean that's mostly it right there. Hockey, Washington Capitals, they couldn't have won it on a more perfect date, plus the whole George Washington at 67 thing. And for the people out there who don't know, just in case you haven't heard me say this before, if you write out George Washington with the alphabetic order, sums to 187. If you write out December 14th, the day he died, with the alphabetic order, also 187. And don't forget, Washington, D.C. is 187 with the reverse alphabetic order. And don't forget that July 6th, the other date that can be written 6/7, 7/6, that's the 187th day of the year. That's George W. Bush's birthday.
Nice.
187.
Sure. And what I wanted to point out about the Capitals, just interesting from a numerology standpoint, is that they have, Washington, D.C. has this double gematria of 47. You can get there with either the septenary method and the Chaldean method. Both give you a 47, and this is super important. Obviously, there's 47 degrees on the Freemasonic compass and square, or the compass anyway. But what's interesting is that Washington Capitals equals 211 in the alphabetic order, and 211 is the 47th prime number. This year, they beat the team from Las Vegas, Nevada, which in Francis Bacon sums to 211. And if you actually write out the entire name, Washington District of Columbia, in Jewish gematria, you get 2011.
Huh. Didn't know that.
211. It's pretty wild.
But just with the alphabetic order, Nevada is 47. The only two states that have the 47 gematria with the alphabetic order are Nevada and Ohio. The number that connects to the presidency, that's also where the first Republican and Democratic presidential debates were. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's another thing. And you talking about that reminds me that this was also one on Mike Pence's birthday. Mike Pence turned 59 years old. He was born in 59. As we know, in Hebrew and English, Freemasonry equals 59. 59, the 17th prime. This season began in 2017. So yeah, I think big tributes here to the Oval Office and the big scripted show of sports and news and government. More proof of how it's all intertwined.
Yeah, Francis Bacon. I also noticed Washington District of Columbia equals 407. So it's just
Huh.
wild how these ciphers even work together like this. I don't understand it, but it's interesting stuff. So here's what's so funny about this game, right? I was watching the game. It's third period. Golden Knights were down by 1, and I think the score of 4-3 kind of stands out. Masonic equals 43, and so there was a face-off with 1:49 on the clock, and the ref skates into the circle, drops the puck, and the clock doesn't move. And then a couple seconds later, it suddenly jumps up to 15 minutes and 19 seconds. And
Huh.
it ticked down 1 second to 15:18, and it just stayed there. And eventually they turned the clock off. And this
Huh.
created this big Twitter storm. So people were making jokes because they're like, hey, here we are playing sports in this city with no clocks. Because if you go to a casino in Vegas, you'll never see a clock indoors. They don't want you to know what time it is. They don't want you to have a reason to leave. It's the same reason they don't have windows, so you can't see the sun going down and think, oh, damn, it's late. So there were a lot of jokes about this and the clock. Well, what's interesting here is that the word clock equals 44 using the alphabetic order. This was the Washington Capitals' 44th season. The Hebrew word for circle equals 44. The clock, usually the shape of a circle. So here's what's interesting about this clock jump. By no means was this an error, was this accidental. I mean, think about it. When have you ever seen a clock suddenly add 15 minutes in a hockey game? It just
Right.
doesn't happen, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals. So here's the thing, right? They went from 1:49 to 15 minutes 19 seconds, as I documented. And if you calculate the number of seconds on the clock, this is 810 seconds. The word capitals equals 81 in the alphabetic order. However, there's another way to do this, right? 1519, if you read this as 1519, subtracted by 149, with 149 in the clock, then you get 1370. And the Capitals play their home games in Washington, D.C., which sums to 137, again, using the standard alphabetic order. And, it's interesting because the word government also equals 137 in the reverse order. In the standard order, this is 133. And 15 minutes and 19 seconds minus 1 minute 49 seconds is 13 minutes and 30 seconds.
Huh.
So it's like, I can see how this could be playing with numbers if you just get one interesting result one way. But there was a very clear Capitals tribute with this, with the 81, the 137.
Sure, and they do this. I mean, I've been showing this for years how they play with the clock for rituals.
Yep.
A lot of people used to think it was stupid years ago, but nobody. I mean, nobody with a brain who's been paying attention is doubting now. Everything they do is ritual, and it's numbers are their thing. So
Yeah, that's
I
exactly it. There's even a screenshot. Someone took a picture of the big scoreboard that overhangs the ice. Because while on television it froze at like 15:18, somebody took a picture of the clock reading 14:78. Like 14 minutes and 78 seconds. How is that even possible for the clock to frickin' show that in the first place,
sure.
So everyone's just like, oh, it's a weird mistake. Well, no, it's the same thing that happened during the Super Bowl when there were 30 seconds of dead air. It was entirely intentional, and it's all part of numeric ritual that's being carried out by the Freemasonry and secret societies that are really running these sports leagues. So definitely something to that.
Yeah, yeah. I was sharing this knowledge with somebody yesterday in the car, and I'm sure he's impressed because the game was just starting. And I said, "Oh, the Cavs are probably definitely going to lose." And I was explaining to him the significance of sweep and how it lined up, and plus a whole lot more. And his mind was blown. He was all into it. He wanted to look it up, but he's like, "I'm starting to really think that aliens or something else controls this world for it all to be this way." I said, "Well, I mean, you never know."
That's
But
what I like about you, Zach. I mean, we've both sat here and made a lot of claims about what's going on with these numbers, but at the same time, I think we're both able to kind of take a step back and say, like, whoa, I mean, there's definitely something beyond, just human intervention that's going on here. And we may never find out, but it's definitely nice to get closer to the truth. No doubt
not
about it.
until we find the they live sunglasses.
That'll help. I'm still waiting to stumble across that box in a church somewhere, but it hasn't
Right.
happened yet. So we got a number of other news stories. Obviously, we had a number of deaths that we talked about. Zach, it's on you. You're the one short on time. I don't know if you want to talk about Donald Trump taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. We got the death of Dwight Clark, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, which we haven't spoken about yet. So we could certainly go
Well,
over
there
that
we can
one.
talk about them all really quick. I got about until 10:30, so I got 25 minutes here.
Okay.
Yeah, so Trump took on the Philadelphia Eagles a span of 121 days from the Super Bowl. Again, if you write out Revelation with the alphabetic order, it sums to 121. Philadelphia gets its name from Revelation. 121 also has a square root of 11. Football is a game of 11 on 11. And don't forget that Revelation's the 66th book, which is the 11th triangular number, meaning if you had 1 through 11, it equals 66. Also, the Warriors were disinvited from the White House. The Warriors are originally from Philadelphia. And if you write out Warriors with the alphabetic order, it sums to 121. That was the narrative right away. Oh, Trump's now disinvited 2 teams. The last was the Warriors. And anyone who watched that story, they were interviewing Steph Curry and players on the Warriors, as well as LeBron James. So, really simple ritual to see. And like I talk about in the book, what I've been talking about on my blog videos for years, every single White House visit or White House storyline in regards to a sports championship is always by the numbers. It's never any other way. So whether they're visiting or it's the story of a cancellation, to build on a contrived narrative, it doesn't matter. It's all done ritualistically and logically by the code. You just listed a bunch of things to talk about. There's the deaths of Farrakhan's son died this week by the numbers. Anthony Bourdain supposedly committed suicide yesterday, June 8th. I mean, how often do we talk about blood sacrifice equals 86? Date can be written 8/6. 86th means to get rid of. Think about Hiroshima. That was 8/6, August 6th. But also the other thing is blood sacrifice is 86, but June 8th can also be written 6/8, like 68. Caskets go 6 feet deep, are 8 feet long. And I remember a long time ago you made a point that you heard me saying that over and over in all these deaths, and you thought I was off my rocker.
Yep.
But
Well, yeah, because I kept thinking, like, how many numbers could there be that are associated with death? And then on June 8th last year, remember we had the sudden death of actress Glenn Headley, and that was a very big surprise. She wasn't ill or anything, and
right,
it turns out she died 3 months, 14 days after Bill Paxton, who played her husband in the movie The Circle,
right.
Pi 3.14. So absolutely there's something to it. And another thing I want to point out about the number 86, not only was it the 8th of June, the 6th month, 8/6, suicide by hanging equals 86 in reverse reduction, as well as blood sacrifice. Both of them 86. And Anthony Bourdain was famous for being a chef. Chef equals 86 in the reverse alphabetic order.
There's a huge one right there. Yeah, I didn't spend enough time decoding the shows and all of his books and stuff that he's done, but I'm sure there's a whole ton of parallels there. But yeah, exactly. Chef 86. I mean, that's
Well, yeah,
yeah.
I did kind of a lengthy live stream on the death of Bourdain yesterday. There were a couple more things that's popped up since. Actually, I think we should maybe talk about this now. The fact that these things are being scripted out by Batman episodes. Do you want to really have your mind blown, Zach? This kind of took me away. Someone who's been in my Discord for a while has been pointing out that things in the news are following the storylines of the 60s Batman series. And I was like, well, it sounds crazy, but it's probably true just because that's the world. It's crazy. And this one really took the cake for me. I think out of all the examples I was given, this really solidified it for me. So basically what this comes back to is an episode from 1966 in Batman where the Penguin opened up a new restaurant. And again, Anthony Bourdain was a chef, right? And this restaurant was only for high-end, it was very wealthy people. You needed $100 just to sit down at a table. And Batman ended up going to meet the Penguin. And the Penguin wanted to talk about his prison reforms lately. And think about how prison reforms have been in the news with Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump. So they go to this restaurant, and Penguin introduces Batman and Robin to the chef. And the chef is named Chef Cordy Blue. Now, Chef Cordy Blue in the reverse alphabetic order equals 224. That's the same as the name of the actor who played him. Lane Bradford equals 224. And also in the reverse order, Anthony Bourdain equals 224.
That's
The
interesting.
actor, meanwhile, who played the Penguin was Burgess Meredith. This was the villain of the episode. Burgess Meredith equals 232. Anthony Michael Bourdain equals 232.
Hold on. Let's go back to the 224 thing. The divisors of 84 add to 224, and Bourdain in alphabetic order is 84. So,
There you go.
yeah.
Good point. And as far as Penguin equals 86 in the alphabetic order, just like Chef equals 86. We mentioned that number. And actually, I started my post about Anthony Bourdain talking about the number 119. The Penguin equals 119. Suicide equals
Right.
119. Anthony Michael Bourdain in reverse reduction equals 119. And here's the real kicker. Oh, well, before I go to this one, I want to mention Chef Anthony Bourdain equals 203 in the alphabetic order. He died 2 weeks, 3 days before his birthday on a date with 23 numerology. This episode was written by a person named Lorenzo Semple Jr., which equals 203. Okay, but here's where it's really good, right? Anthony Bourdain died at the age of 61. This was a 2-part episode of Batman. The first episode was the 61st. Parts Unknown aired for 61 months before Bourdain died.
There we go. Perfect. And again, 61's the 18th prime. His death comes in 2018. We're seeing these numbers again and again together this year, 61 and 18.
Yeah, he died a span of 18
Oh,
days before his
right.
before his birthday in the year
That's right.
2018. Remember, Dwight Clark just died at 61, and he was born on 1/8.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
Zach, get this, right? If you measure from the date that Parts Unknown first aired, Anthony Bourdain's show, to the date that Bourdain died, it was exactly 1,881 days, all right? Nothing terribly special, 1881. Well, if you measure from the date of the last episode of this Batman 2-part series to the date that Anthony Bourdain died, it's 18,810 days. Exactly like 1881, but with a 0 at the end of it. So not only do we have all these geometric relations in alphabetic and reverse order between characters of the show and Anthony Bourdain, but we also have an exact match in the measurement if you drop the 0, which we always do in numerology. So this kind of blew my mind. Like, I mean, we know the news is scripted out by decades in advance, but are you telling me that this guy, Anthony Bourdain, was like coded out by the numbers in relation to this episode ahead of time? I mean, this is kind of... It's crazy
Well,
stuff.
so I mean, it might not. Yeah. I would say yeah. Talking about the 224 thing, and then noticing that Bourdain's 84. The other thing that's staring right in my face right now that I'm looking at his birthday, is that he's born on June 25th. That's George Orwell's birthday, the author of 1984. 84. And Masonry, as we know, equals 84. He's dead in France, which is a Masonic mecca, and a lot of suspicious deaths in France as well over the years that we've documented. So yeah, I mean, Anthony Bourdain, for all we know, is a made up character just for television. So
Right. That's what it looks like, man.
yeah.
So they changed his the place where he died. Yesterday you mentioned you had documented the city he died. I think it was like Strasbourg or something.
Strasbourg, France is what they said, which equals 187.
And yeah, here we go. 187 alphabetic order. Well, they've changed it. Now it says Kaisersberg. Oh gosh, I can't pronounce this. But look at this. In the reverse reduction method, it's 187. Kaisersberg, Vignoble, Hautrin, France.
So the new location's also 187, huh?
Yeah, in reverse
Is it?
reduction.
I mean, do you need to even see anymore? It's just, yeah, it's a joke, man.
So, yeah, I went live yesterday saying, oh, this man was ritually sacrificed. What are the odds that he's really dead, even? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem
Well,
too good.
So yesterday, the first ride I did yesterday was a group of probably people around 30 years old, and I was taking them out to this wine tasting, and I was just listening to him talk forever because they were talking about the death of Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, and after just listening to him talk forever, and then there was just like a gap, like a pause, I just said, I got to ask you guys. There was three other people in the car. I said, don't you guys ever question the news and if these people are really even committing suicide? And the guy who was sitting in the front seat next to me goes, huh? He goes, I actually don't, but he goes, that is interesting to think about. And he was the same guy who, like 5 minutes earlier when they were talking, had made the point, like, why? Like he said, Anthony Bourdain has the best life. He gets to travel and eat food and make money. He's like, I mean, how do you get tired of that? And
Right.
so I just listened to people talk, and then I made the point about do they ever question the real? And then there was a woman. It was two men and one woman, and the woman in the back goes, "Oh God, is this conspiracy theory? Isn't it?" Like, so I said to her, I said, "Is questioning things conspiracy theory?" And she goes, "Well, I mean, if you're disagreeing with what's being reported," I said, "So you trust the media?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." I
Oops.
said, "You guys want to learn something new today?" And they said, "What?" I said, "I actually have a book on this subject of celebrity deaths, and the entire book's not on celebrity deaths, but there's a big chapter. It's called
It
Murder
might
by
as well
Numbers."
be.
And I said,
Yeah.
one of the key numbers I teach about, or two, which are reflections of each other, are 68 and 86. And I said, there's this language called Gematria. A lot of people die in connection to these numbers. Blood sacrifice equals 86, and then also caskets go 6 feet deep or 8 feet long, and you see these suspicious deaths in this number again and again. And right away, they all got into it. And then they wanted to know more. And then I taught them about how the place he reportedly died, some to 187, and they all knew about that number. And
Yep.
so anyway, what was funny is just talking to them about this for a few minutes, and then they started asking me about sports. They said, "Who's going to win tonight?" I said, "I'm pretty sure the Cavs are done. It'll be a sweep." And I explained 68 and 23. He's like, "All right, I'm watching." So anyway, they were watching, and but what was cool is just telling them about that real quick. They thought they all got inspired by it, and I was surprised that, especially the woman who just said conspiracy theory, but they gave me a $10 bill too. So I was like, "Oh, thank you." They appreciated the knowledge, but yeah. So it's just amazing to me how few people question things, and I learned that when I was young. But that's the problem with our society is like we don't question what we consider authority; we just accept it no matter how bizarre it is. And that's all part of the mind control. But
Yep.
just being in that car with those three people, I was like, I feel like I just broke the mind control for three more people today. So,
Yeah, I was gonna suggest like I don't know if Uber would frown upon it if it matters, but what if you had like a little like 100-page pamphlet, right, which is like the basics. You teach someone like this, give them a little handout before they leave the car. Whether they, throw you a few bucks for it, whatever. I don't know if you can sell anything in your car. That's for some
well,
reason
I
I think
guess you
that's
can. There
probably
was just a big story in the national news about a guy selling jewelry that drives for Uber and supposedly did like over $200,000 in jewelry sales in the last year while working for Uber. But I'm just like, how's he working this out? He's not getting robbed. I mean, how much jewelry's he got in his car? But
sure. So there's no policy against selling things of your own in a Uber vehicle, right? Like they don't care.
I guess not.
I guess not.
I guess not.
So that would be cool, man. If you had like a short pamphlet version, so to speak, of how the language is built and just the most prime examples like September 11th, the Boston bombing, things like that. A
Well,
little
my
to
problem
go
is
bag for the
I'm
for your
almost
guests.
done doing this because when I move there, where I'm moving to, there's no market for Uber or Lyft. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull that off. But somebody else out there could do it. Some other Uber or Lyft driver listening. So
Yeah, man. Just if we could employ an army of like just a few Uber drivers in each city, I mean that would be pretty cool.
well,
Yeah.
I was thinking that might be the way to do it to get paid and teach Gematria. Uber and Lyft are in most places, larger cities, and
Oh.
yeah, you can make decent money while talking about Gematria. So, and what I have actually noticed is the people I teach Gematria to are more likely to tip. I'm definitely positive about that now. So,
Sure.
yeah.
It makes sense, man. I mean, I would definitely feel a little more obliged to give a little extra if that was the case for me. If I came into a car and learned something in addition to getting to where I needed to be without ending up dead, like we got in the news with an Uber murder earlier this week. I don't know if you saw that.
I did. There was a Uber murder this week. I did
Oh
not
yeah.
know
All
that.
right. Well, this was my number one story, but let's just go over this, seeing as we only got you for a couple more minutes, and since you're driving with Uber, I think it's appropriate. Let me see here. My volume is a little low on my video stream. Anyway, so yeah, we had this murder. Let's find this. All right. So on June 2nd, this was last Saturday. we got news that an Uber ride went terribly wrong. A
So
guy
right
named
away, I just
Michael.
got to cut it. You're probably gonna get there, but just right away, I'm like, oh, June 2nd, really? Because kill equals 26, so does Uber. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even realize Uber was 26 either. I got the other numerologies. Yeah, Uber is 26, reverse reduction. Now, if you add up all the numbers, 6 plus 2 plus 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 8,
Oh
you
my
get
God, Derek, this is in
19.
Seattle. This story's in Seattle, isn't it?
No, it wasn't Seattle. It was, let me find, it was Denver, Colorado. But it was on a date with 19 numerology, and Uber equals 19. It was also a date with 46 numerology, 6 plus 2 plus 20 plus 18, and Uber equals 46 in the alphabetic order. It's funny though because Uber is all about 19. You know, Uber equals
Right,
19 in reduction.
right.
And if you add up the gematria of the two men in this story, Michael Hancock and Hyun Kim, you get 109 in the standard reduction method.
Huh.
The headline they gave us: Uber driver charged with first-degree murder after allegedly killing passenger, DA. This sums to 361 in the full reduction method, and 361 is 19 squared. So they just hammered us with 19s in this story.
Amazing. Yeah. It's just always the same thing. Anytime Uber's in the news, there's always a 19 there. 19 date numerology plus what you just said. When I was looking up
100%.
that story, I just realized there was also an Uber killing story from last year on the 187th day of the year in Seattle. That's why I thought it was Seattle. I just typed it in real quick, and it was one of the top headlines that came up. Last year on July 6th, the 187th day, Uber killing in Seattle. I didn't even know about that story last year.
Well, it's pretty clear to me that this story is a fabricated story based on the mathematics of the circle. And the reason I say that, you start with Denver, Colorado, which equals 227 in the reverse order. 227, of course, 22 divided by 7 gives you pi. The number of degrees in a circle is 360, which equals 227. And speaking of 360, if you just add the name gematria of these two guys, Michael Hancock, Hyun Kim, you get 360 in the reverse alphabetic order. You also get 108 reverse reduction. This is a number, important for geometry. And then 99 in standard reduction, which is mathematics of the circle equals 99.
Right.
And like earlier on, I mentioned how 3.14 equals 888 in Jewish gematria. Well, the names Michael Hancock and Hyun Kim equals, if I type it right, you'll see it sums to 888, just like 3.14.
Perfect.
If you add up their ages, 29 and 45, you get 74. Denver, Colorado equals 74. The name of the murderer, Michael Hancock, equals 74. And this is also the Greek gematria of circle. In isopsephy, circle equals 740. Let's see. The victim, his name was Hyun Kim, which equals 88. 88, the number that represents the infinite cycle of time. It's made up of 4 circles. Even the name Hancock and Kim, if you just add those two last names together, you get 88.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely more hoax codes here as well. I guess the last thing I'll mention, again, just adding their name gematria together, you get 617 in prime numbers. And 617 is the 113th prime number. And 113 is our number of deception. As you can see on the screen, if you're watching, words like perjury, dishonest, disinfo, fiction, a lot of words equaling 113. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the only other I talked about Kate Spade's death and how that was synced up, and then we had the caller on the radio show this week who helped us connect it even further to history, which was great. The only other death that Dwight Clark's death, that was another one by the numbers, but Louis Farrakhan Jr., Louis Farrakhan's son, dead at 60 on June 5th. I think that was the same day Kate Spade died. That pops for a few reasons. The N word equals 60. His son dead at 60 in his sleep. Um, the day he died, June 5th, that's the 156th day of the year. The number of a man, 156. If you write out 33 as a word, it sums to 156. People equals 33. Person equals 33. The only other number when written out as a word that sums to 156 is 28. And the word man equals 28. 28, the second perfect number. The first perfect number, 6. Man made on the 6th day.
Hmm.
Um, his father is 85 years old right now, and his son died in Phoenix, Arizona, which equals 85 in reduction gematria, which is also the reflection of 58, and Nation of Islam equals 58. I noticed that he died 25 days after his father's 85th birthday. Death and time have that gematria 25. There's probably a whole lot more to it, but again, just another death while sleeping, 60 years old, not really all that old. They're not, well, whenever these people die, they say, oh, supposedly he was suffering from this problem, but obviously that's just the excuse. But it's just more proof. Here's another person who's no doubt a Masonic individual, Louis Farrakhan Sr., and we see these people in positions of power, positions of fame. They have to give up those around them to sustain themselves. And, it's no different with Bill Cosby. Enos Cosby, dead by the numbers. His daughter, dead by the numbers. Shamed by the numbers. And not to just pick on black men. I mean, it's this entire world of celebrity. We just see this again and again. The suspicious deaths, the suicides that don't make sense, the passing in the sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And the numbers on Farrakhan, too. I mean, he's got all the numbers stamped on him. Farrakhan equals 42. Number stamped all over Black history. Lewis equals 59, like Negro, like slave, like blues. And then he loses the son at 60. So,
No. Yeah, it's interesting. You always hear about these diseases these people have had for many, many years, and then they say, well, it just claimed their life. But at no point do you ever hear about their health deteriorating for months and months beforehand, like what usually would happen when someone does die naturally.
right.
It's
Absolutely.
that's the theme,
And,
it seems.
you know what else is right in front of my face? I'm just looking at my post that I did. They talk about how at his death, they read from the Holy Quran, Surah 2, verse 154,
Yep.
and Louis Farrakhan with the alphabetic order is 154.
Yeah, and I also noticed in the Kabbalah, Louis Farrakhan Jr. equals 154 also.
Huh.
And, of course, 154, that's the gematria of ritual sacrifice using the alphabetic order.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Good observation.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up
Oh,
on 12:30, Zach. I don't know if you got any more time to stick around.
well, I got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. What else you got on your mind? Any other news? Anything else you want to? Any rants you want to make? I
Mm,
mean, people like to hear you rant sometimes.
well, is there anything we haven't covered that we should have talked about real quick?
Um, we probably got the most important things. I know I'm going to spend a little more time going after these or going
Oh,
over these
I
after we
know.
drop off.
I know. How about that NASA news from June 7th? That made me laugh.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That'll lead me into my top 4 news stories because that's number 4.
Okay. Tell me what your top four are real quick.
Well, we got the news about NASA on Mars, and it was like NASA Day. Like I put this on my blog. They just gave us all stories about NASA on CNN's front page. It was like 6 links for freaking NASA stories.
Okay.
The number 3 story I had, it was a police officer who pulled over another police officer, and it turned out to be the cop who delivered him as a baby back in 1991.
So
And this is a
the cop was a doctor as well, or a cop
well,
delivered a baby?
apparently his mom was driving and started to go into labor in the car, so they had to call the police. And this guy showed up and delivered him as a baby, and then 26 years later, he pulls the guy who delivered him over.
26 years, huh? Were they black and white?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously propaganda. Well, all right. What are the other stories?
All right, number 2 was the nasty obituary A woman in Minnesota died, and her kids left a scathing obituary accusing her of abandoning the family and saying
Huh.
that no one's going to miss her. This is all by the numbers. And then the
Huh.
number one story was the Uber murder.
Okay.
So,
Well, okay, yeah, I got to get caught up on the headlines. But to do the NASA one real quick before I go, this news came June 7th, 6/7. The story was organic matter found on Mars. And if you just write out the word organic with the alphabetic order, organic sums to 67. And then the date numerology for June 7th, 2018 is 6 plus 7 plus 20 plus 18, which equals 51. And if you write out Mars with the alphabetic order, sums to, of course, 51. And 51 is connected to the word conspiracy. It's connected to the word outer space. It's connected to Freemason. All of those things have Gematria 51. Think about Area 51. The word moon also has Gematria 51. Some people say the moon landing was filmed at Area 51. So, perfect date for Mars news. Perfect day to say organic matter found. It made me look a little bit more. The rover is named Curiosity. Curiosity in the base cipher sums to 139 and 59 like Freemasonry. We know that Freemasonry runs the world of space. Curiosity also has Gematria of 104 like 10-4. And with regards to the date being June 7th, it just reminds me of the year 76, as in July 4th, 1776, because that's a date with 104 numerology. What else was there? This Curiosity rover, it launched November 26th, 2011, and supposedly it landed on Mars August 6th, 2012. What's interesting about those dates is November 26th leaves 35 days left in the year. NASA, with the alphabetic order, equals 35. Like I, remember I equals 35. Five's the third prime. 3 letters in the word I. 3 eyes, 2 on the face, 1 in the mind. It's all about controlling the mind's eye. November 26th is also the 330th day of the year for a little 33. August 6th is the 218th day of the year. Zenith of the Alpha has done a good job showing how that number relates to time, its symbolism. August 6th is also the day that leaves 147 days left in the year. Outer space has Gematria of 147 in the base cipher. Freemason 147. Conspiracy 147. There's a whole lot to 147 in space. And if you read my chapter in Letters and Numbers on space news by the numbers, 2 of the biggest numbers I cover in that chapter are 51 and 147. And for a third, 35. And here they are all again in this story. And I didn't even talk about this story at all in that chapter. So, I mean, that's the thing about Letters and Numbers. If you get that book and print it out, I mean, you can just write your own notes day by day and just build on to what's already there and just show how the evidence continues to mount. For just like I say in the book, all of NASA's space news contrived by a code. This code, the alphabetic order, the dates on the calendar, it's so simple. It's ABC 1, 2, 3. So anyway, I'm 3 minutes over my time. I got to hit the road, Derek. Thanks for waking me up this morning. I appreciate you being my alarm clock.
no, Zach. Thanks for you waking me up, dude. That's
Well,
kind of how it
you're
works.
welcome,
But,
man.
I know what you mean. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so I got to go run an errand, and then I got to get back to work. I'm almost over the mountains, so.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for waking up early and hopping aboard. And you have a good day and stay safe on the road out there, my friend.
All right, I'll try to, man. All right, take care, everyone. Later.
All right, take it easy. Later. Oops. All right. So special thanks again to Zach Hubbard for spending his Saturday morning here. Another thing that I wanted to mention in regards to... Oh, suddenly my volume spiked up as soon as I took Zach off. That's weird. All right, well, anyway. The word for time... In English Extended Gematria, the word time equals 254. And this Curiosity rover, which launched on the 330th day of 2011, It landed on August 6th of the next year, which was 254 days later. And from what I could tell, this whole thing with the NASA ritual was all a tribute to time. And we can explain how. And Zach covered the 67, the 51 as far as why we got the news on this date. Now, he mentioned how in the alphabetic order, curiosity equals 139, same as Freemasonry in the same method. Well, in Francis Bacon Gematria, NASA also equals 139. It's a very, very significant number to this group. The headline they gave us, right here on CNN, you can see, organic matter found on Mars. In the reverse reduction method, that sums to 139 as well. So again, it's like you can pick out all the numbers from the story and then look at the headline and you're going to find repetition in what you just discovered. June 7th is the 158th day on the calendar. In the reverse alphabetic order, Freemasonry equals 158. Also in that method, NASA sums to 73. The date June 7th, where we got all this NASA news, is 7 weeks, 3 days after NASA's birthday, which is on July 29th. As far as NASA having so many Gematric ties to Masonry, consider that NASA equals 73, the same as Mason equaling 73, also in the reverse method. When you click into the article, the headline they give you is NASA's Curiosity rover finds organic matter on Mars. In Francis Bacon Gematria, where the capital letters are taken into account, it sums to 703. Remember, 7 weeks, 3 days after NASA's birthday. NASA equals 73. Also in Francis Bacon, time equals 73. And this, just like all NASA rituals, all having to do with time. Now, the keeper of time is Saturn. Saturn in Jewish Gematria sums to 511. And measuring from the date that Curiosity landed on Mars to the date of this story is 5 years, 10 months, and 1 day. In my work, I've discussed in the past how Trump kind of represents Saturn, the keeper of time. He ran his campaign for 511 days, was voted in with the 115th Congress. Well, today is 51 weeks, or not today, but the date of this story was 51 weeks, 1 day after Trump's birthday. There was a number of other tributes to time in this headline. I won't get too deep into those numbers. Another phrase they gave us that really made me laugh was mysterious methane on Mars. And this gives us the 103 ritual code 13. We also get a 31 in ordinal for a nice 1331 tribute. And in the reverse order, this sums to 311. And 311 is, of course, the reverse of 113, the number of dishonesty. The number for dishonesty equals 311 in Gematria, which is pretty interesting. The Curiosity rover was launched on a date with double numerology of 41, and 41 is the 13th prime number. Also worth pointing out, earlier this year, NASA launched another rocket that's supposed to be going to Mars, that InSight lander. That InSight lander is scheduled to land on November 26th of this year, just like how Curiosity launched on November 26th of 2011. And again, November 26th, the 330th day of the year. NASA sums to 33 in Jewish ordinal. And I feel as if Jewish ordinal is a relevant cipher in this method, considering that the word NASA comes from Nasa in Hebrew, which means to lie or to deceive. So that's our number 4 story. Kind of ruining the surprises here with the countdown, but let's talk about this story about a cop who pulled over a cop who delivered him as a baby. I wish I could know why Zach knew that it was a white cop and a black cop. I think he said something to do with propaganda. And of course, usually we're used to seeing, a white cop killing a black guy or something of that nature. Here it's sort of the opposite. It's a union of black and white. But, think about the whole Masonic ritual. They have the black and white checkerboard floors. And, so maybe it's a little bit of symbolism in that direction as well. In reduction, the word police equals 33. Much of police is involved in masonry, which equals 33. Masonry, a foundation that's built on secrecy, which sums to 33. So this is kind of a hoax code, right? This is a story about Officer Michael Patterson pulling over a man named Matthew Bailey. And in the standard alphabetic order, Michael Patterson and Matthew Bailey equals 330, just like the number 33. The town in which this occurred was Kingwood Township, New Jersey. In the standard reduction method, this sums to 130. Again, 13, the other primary ritual code. Also note the 148 in single reduction. 33 is 148 in the Jewish order. Now, in our two capital letter ciphers, which are Francis Bacon Gematria and Frank Baconus Gematria, we get 13 and 33 from the G. And, you have the capital G on the Freemasonic emblem. So 13 and 33 always getting these tributes in these rituals. In reverse reduction, ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry sums to 227. The name of this officer who pulled him over was named Michael Patterson. Michael Patterson equals 227 in ALW Kabbalah, which is based on every 11th letter in the alphabetic order. And also the KFW method, which we call secondary Kabbalah. He's got double Gematria of the 227. In reverse reduction, Michael Patterson equals 91. And if you look at 91, well, I'm going to try to make this work. 91 is the 13th triangular number. And the reason this is interesting in regards to this story is because of how old the police officer was on the date that he made this stop. He was exactly 1,391 weeks old. 1391, like how his name is 91, the 13th triangular number. If you use square numbers, ritual equals 1391. And you also get this value in reverse squares. So how appropriate that this police officer, who's likely a Freemason, takes part in this numeric ritual at the age of exactly 1391 weeks. The word ritual, 1391. The headline given to us by CNN had a pi connection in single reduction. We got a 314 using that method. Now, in reverse reduction, this headline sums to 307. That's the same as Freemason in Jewish Gematria, 307. If you include the 27 in the headline and add that to the equation, you get a value of 325 in reverse reduction. And this, of course, matches the ordinal value of Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which sums to 325. On the date of the story, the officer was 320 months and 2 days old. Of course, you have the 322, the skull and bones number. This is also the inverse of the Gematria of the moon. The word moon equals 170 in Jewish Gematria. Michael Patterson equals 170 in Jewish ordinal. And then I'll also point out that Michael Patterson equals 71 in both English and Jewish reduction, 71. And the headline they gave us sums to 710. Funny story out of Springfield, Minnesota. An obituary was published earlier this week for a woman named Kathleen Demlow. And in this obituary, it was actually really funny. It says right here, she abandoned her children. Oh, no, let's start with this. The obituary reads, in 1962, she became pregnant by her husband's brother, Lyle Demlow, and moved to California. She abandoned her children, Gina and Jay, who were then raised by her parents in Clements, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Shunk. And you got to wonder, how could a newspaper possibly allow an obituary like this to be published, right? I mean, apparently people at the publishing company, at the newspaper, actually said, hey, this seems kind of sketchy. You know, we don't really want to run this, and they were forced to, right? So let's talk about the numerology and how this is a complete hoax from the get-go. Let's start with the name of the city that this occurs in. The city is Springfield, Minnesota. And in Jewish gematria, Springfield equals 330, giving us a 33 hoax code right off the bat. Now, if you write out the number 33 in the alphabetic order, you get 156 and 66 reduced. The name Kathleen Demlow equals 156 alphabetic order and 66 reduced. Same numbers and the same methods. In Jewish gematria, the number 33 equals 895. In English gematria, Springfield, Minnesota equals 895. Yet another connection to the number 33 pointing at this being a hoax. Now in the Bible, Jesus was crucified at age 33. He was a ritual human sacrifice, which sums to 895 also in the Jewish method. And in all these stories about death, you know, with hoax deaths and fake news, they just have to put the numerology of the death of Jesus in there somehow. So in this case, this woman died on May 31st. May 31st is the 151st day of the year. Using the alphabetic order, Jesus Christ equals 151. This story was published in the Redwood Falls Gazette. And using all reduction exceptions, Redwood Falls Gazette equals 151. This is a real simple cipher. It's the reverse order. Everything reduced except for master numbers. Just single reduction there. So a lot of 151 as well. Oops. The 151st prime number is 877. The headline given to us in this article sums to 877 using the reverse alphabetic order. In the standard English order, this headline sums to 770, and this is the same gematria as Christ in the same method. Christ equals 77. All right, so Kathleen Demlow, and you'll always see this too. You'll always see hoax codes when you punch in the name of the couple. Kathleen Demlow and Dennis Demlow, that was her husband's name. This sums to 130 in reduction and 301 in ordinal for another 1331 tribute, just like how we got that from the NASA headline earlier. Springfield, Minnesota, in reverse reduction, sums to 113. This is the number of deception. And then in full reduction, you have another 13, 103. And then check out how they said she had two kids, Gina and Jay. Gina and Jay equals 1103 in Jewish gematria, the number of deception, like 113. And don't overlook the detail that they got married in Wabasso. Wabasso has the word ass inside of it, because they always like to throw sexual innuendo at us. A couple more funny details about this story. They tell us this imaginary woman was born on March 19th, 1938. The name Kathleen equals 319, appropriate for her birthday to be 319. Her birth name was Kathleen Shunk. This sums to 73. And the dates they give us, March 19th to her date of death, May 31st, those are separated by 73 days. Redwood Falls Gazette equals 703. And this is a number we always see stamped into sacrifice. Ritual sacrifice, 73 reduction. The word sacrifice, 73 in ordinal. There's a few more things here, too. Just pointing out Redwood Falls Gazette equals 218 alphabetic order and 2108 extended, which is the same gematria as death. And this whole story is just about a random death. I'm just going to touch on this Uber story, and then I'm actually going to look at the YouTube chat. Sounds like we got a bunch of questions in there, and probably a lot to go through, but I'll take a swat at it. Once again, just looking at this Uber story, we talked about it with Zach on the air earlier. All these 19s in the story and how this was constructed around the mathematics of the circle. They also gave us some 33 hoax codes, which is why I want to look at this again. In the story, they quoted the family as saying that Michael Hancock, the man who committed this murder, was a great dad. And in Gematria, great dad equals 33. His last name is Hancock. Hancock equals 330 in Sumerian Gematria. And the man he killed, his last name was Kim. Kim equals 33 in the alphabetic order. All right, YouTubes. I have to find my own stream and mute the site. Let's see if I can't jump in the chat here. I don't know if... All right. Oh, there's too many numbers in the chat. This is going to be too hard to go over. I appreciate everyone who's pitching in and throwing a little extra gematria in there. He says death equals 187. Does death equal 187? Death equals 1807 in reverse extended. I've noticed that before. And this is pretty interesting, right? I mean, we talk about this as a homicide code. 187. Death equaling 1807 in reverse extended. And this is a cipher, again, based on the reverse alphabetic order that amplifies the alphabet instead of reducing them. Very logical cipher. All right, so we talked about the Belmont Stakes. I am going to just touch on this later at the end of the podcast, just for anyone who happened to have missed it. Zach and I went over the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup, as well as the clock malfunction that occurred towards the end of Game 5. We are, however, going to talk about Donald Trump a little bit more on this story about him, uninviting the Eagles from the White House the day before they were supposed to visit. So the date that this story made national headlines was June 5th. The story broke the night of June 4th, but June 5th is when we really got this in the news. And measuring from the date of the Super Bowl when the Eagles won, which was on February 4th, to the date June 5th was 4 months and 1 day. And the reason this sticks out is because Super Bowl equals 41. And here we're talking about the American flag. USA, using the alphabetic order, also equaling 41. Now in the reverse order, USA equals 40. This is the same as United States in reduction. The 40th prime number, 173. National anthem has gematria of 173 in Francis Bacon here. And the date of this story falls 17 weeks and 3 days after the Super Bowl, with the end date included. The date June 5th had full numerology, 6 plus 5 plus 20 plus 18 of 49. If you reduce the numerology and add all the individual digits together, you get 22. This story is about the Eagles. Eagles equals 22 reduction and 49 ordinal. And as far as this 22, I mean, think about how the NFL, there's always, it's an 11 on 11 game, so there's always 22 players on the field. National Football League equals 220 using the alphabetic order. 220 reflects the number 22 in numerology. 22 is the master builder number. Master builder number equals 220. And the funniest thing about this is that the NFL is going at it with Donald John Trump. And Donald John Trump equals 220. And all of this occurring on a date with 22 numerology. We mentioned the 121, but another very interesting thing about the date of this story, June 5th. June 5th is the 156th day of the year. In Gematria, 666 equals 156. So does the phrase triple sixes. Both of these sum to 156. And in Jewish Gematria, Star-Spangled Banner equals 666. So what a perfect date for the American flag to be in the news on the 156th day of the year. They gave us another 317 in the headline. The word lie flipped upside down, both literally and in Gematria, equals 317. In the reverse order, the headline was 1131, which is 11 and the 11th prime number. Again, football, 11 on 11. So, an observation that I made about this is going to carry us into the death of Dwight Clark. Using the alphabetic order, national anthem equals 147. And here we have a story connecting the national anthem to the Super Bowl, which sums to 1,407 in Jewish Gematria. 49ers legend Dwight Clark died on June 4th, and his death was in the headlines on June 5th, the same day as we got this story about the flag. And if you measure from Dwight Clark's birthday on January 8th of this past year to June 4th, it's exactly 147 days. And, we just talked about this number in regards to NASA. Conspiracy summing to 147 in the reverse alphabetic order. So does the word Freemason, 147. And, Masonry and these other societies, what they're exhibiting here is numerical knowledge. Numerical equals 147. Knowledge equals 147. Dwight Clark played for the San Francisco 49ers. And it's kind of interesting that ALS in the reverse alphabetic order equals 49, just like the team that he played for. And the date that his death was in the headlines had numerology of 49. And again, it was the Eagles who were also in the news. Eagles equals 49. His full name is Dwight Edward Clark. His birthday was January 8th, written internationally as 8/1, just like his name in reduction. 81 factors to 9 times 9. Dwight Edward Clark equals 99 in reverse reduction. And consider how this is the 99th season of the NFL that's upcoming here. And as we pointed out on the Gematria effect, I definitely have reason to believe that this is a sacrifice related to the Super Bowl. If you measure from the date of his death, June 4th, 2018, to the date of next year's Super Bowl, you find it's 244 days. And in Hebrew Gematria, the word for kill equals 244. On top of that, this is also 7 months and 30 days. Sacrifice summing to 73. Ritual sacrifice summing to 73. And this is really interesting too. I mean, 35 weeks, you could say this is a span of 34 weeks and 7 days. And sacrifice in Hebrew is 347. So if you're going to have the guy die on a date in relation to the upcoming Super Bowl, this is probably the date to do it. Also consider June 4th, written 6/4 here in the United States. The word kill equals 64. The term sacrifice equals 46, and it's written internationally as 4/6. So his death definitely tied to this. And someone called into the Gematria effect, and they had a really good observation. They pointed out that Dwight Clark's first game ever was against the Minnesota Vikings, and then his last game ever in the playoffs was also against the Minnesota Vikings. And if you add up the scores in those games, the Vikings outscored the 49ers 64-46, or maybe it was the other way around. Either way, the teams combined for 64 points and 46, and then Dwight Clark ends up dying on 6/4 or 4/6. We've gotten a lot of hints as far as the Vikings possibly making another Super Bowl run. Remember, the Vikings had the miracle play this year. In the playoffs against the Saints, they had a 61-yard touchdown. The word miracle equals 61. I got a pretty lengthy post decoding that whole event, too, if you want to search my blog and run a search out for, what was his name? I think it was Stephon Diggs? No. That doesn't seem right. I can't remember the guy's name because I don't really pay attention to football too much. Anyway, this ALS disease that Dwight Clark died of is also called Lou Gehrig's disease. Clark was born in the year 57, so it's kind of interesting that Lou Gehrig equals 57 in reduction. He died on a date with numerology that reflects the moon. Moon equals 21. He died on a date with a life lesson number of 21. The date also had 48 numerology. The Latin name for the moon is 48. And the date he died left 210 days in the year. The word moon equals 210. Now, here's what's really creepy about the announcement that Dwight Clark made when he first said that when he first came out and made the statement that he had ALS. His age on that date was 60 years and 70 days old. Now, the name of the disease is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. In the alphabetic order, this number is 331. Or this sums to 331. And 331 is the 67th prime number, right? And again, he was 60 years, 70 days old on the date he announced he had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. 67 is commonly coded into death, both blood sacrifice and human sacrifice, both sum to 67 in reduction. A couple pi connections in his age, too, when he made this announcement. What I also found interesting is that Dwight Clark died 2 months and 20 days after Stephen Hawking died of ALS. Remember that back on Pi Day? And again, it was the National Football League and Donald John Trump in the news, and both of them have 220 Gematria. As far as the disease, ALS to begin with, it has a Gematria of 317 and 1317, which is a number we talk about in lies. So, hey, if these people are really getting sacrificed with, like, fake diseases, which is something that I suspect might be happening, seems kind of a wild thing to suggest, but there's just too many weird things about this world, man. There's too many weird things going on. Okay, so I'm going to play a quick tune. I'm going to take a break, and I will be back in a minute. Talk to you shortly. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. Also a special shout out to everyone who threw me some birthday wishes this past week. For those who may have been unaware, I celebrated my 33rd birthday back on June 4th. And yeah, I'm still 33, the master teacher number. I considered this my platinum birthday, given that I had 33 birth numerology. And I don't really remember my golden birthday. I turned 4. So that's not one really worth celebrating too much. But yeah, nothing really changed overnight. I still feel the same. I'd say I'm probably as happy as ever. I feel as directed and guided as ever. So I'm at a pretty good point in my life. I don't know how long I'll be doing this Gematria business. It seems to be like a kind of a negative net to the effort sometimes, but there's a lot of people waking up to it, and it's good to get the positive feedback. So I keep doing it. I kind of feel like I'm doing it out of a sense of duty at this point. Recently there's been times where I sit down and normally when I'd be excited to decode something, there's been times where I just sit down and don't want to do it. And over this past week, there were, and granted it was my birthday and I took an extra day off of work, so the blog was a little bit slower. This month, I actually have a number of things to do around the house. I'm going to be taking a little time off of work too, so the blog might be a little bit slower. The podcast might be a little bit shorter, but it's probably too long to begin with. So just want to give a big thanks to everyone who still follows and says what's up and appreciates the work. It means a lot to me. All right, so we're going to talk about the death of Kate Spade. I did a pretty long live stream on this earlier this week, I the way I titled the stream, I asked the question, are we living in the moon matrix, right? And the reason I said that is because, how is it possible that someone like this even exists with these numbers in the first place to get sacrificed on this date? It's just so perfect. And, this whole thing with the alignments with Batman and Anthony Bourdain's death, it really makes me wonder to what extent these people are coded and made up, right? So is it possible that Kate Spade's whole life is just a theatrical presentation? Even the fact that she got married to Andrew Spade. Because if they're really scripting things decades in advance to the point where, Batman in the 60s is lining up with events of today, then perhaps all these people's names and birthdays are just fake, and they're just building them up for these rituals. But based on things that I've seen in my life, where numbers of the moon have kind of interjected themselves, and then I also talked about the Gordon Hayward injury. He's a guy who plays basketball for the Boston Celtics, and in the first game of the season, he broke his leg, and it was completely by the numbers and by the numbers of the moon. So in that live stream, I just kind of threw out the question, what's going on here? Why does it seem like the moon is in charge when it comes to decoding and looking at these numbers? It almost it raises more questions than answers. So I have no doubt that we're living in some sort of simulated matrix. And I think the movie The Matrix was put out as a hint to kind of, let people know that this is what's going on, but, just tidbits of truth and then leaving the rest for people to figure out. And while we're on the topic of the organic matrix, I just want to point something out that really kind of blew my mind, right? And let's just go to Wikipedia real quick. Oops. If I can figure out how to get to the website I get to the most. So on Wikipedia, there was a little article here on the movie Pi that came out in 1998. And what's so interesting about this film is the main character of the movie, who is also a writer of the film, his name is Sean Gillette. Sean Gillette was born on my birthday, June 4th, 17 years before I was. And think about how moon equals 170 in Jewish Gematria. So this guy born June 4th, the main character of the movie Pi. In reduction, pi equals 16. Pi is the 16th letter of the Greek alphabet. This movie came out 1 month, 6 days after our birthday. And it's just strange that, I always talk about 13 as the primary ritual code. And, in fact, my full name sums to 130 in reverse full reduction, right? So I kind of have this connection as well to the number 13. So not only did this movie come out when I was 13 years old, and this movie introduces Hebrew Gematria, talks about letters and numbers and how the language is built. Another movie that came out when I was 13 years old is The Matrix. The Matrix came out when I was 13. And this was released on the date March 31st, 1999. So first, let's look at the basic numerology of The Matrix, right? The matrix in the reverse alphabetic order equals 125. And let's see. It was released on March 31st, 1999. And this is a date with 125 numerology. And as you can see at the top of the screen on YouTube, the matrix equals 125. In the alphabetic order, the matrix equals 118. And this came out in the year 1999. 19 plus 99 equals 118. So that's pretty cool, right? Well, also check out this numerology. 3 plus 31 plus 99 equals 133. And this was released on the date March 31st, written 331. So you have a 133 and a 331 combination here. Well, look at how old I was on the date of this movie's release. 13 years, 300 days, 133, and it came out on 331 on a date with 133 numerology. If you include the end date, you have a 1331. And just on my live stream earlier, I was talking about how my family has all these connections to the number 1331. So you talk about tripping yourself out. This does the trick, right? And, what if the matrix is just coded with Gematria? And now here I come along building the calculator for the public to see it. And it's really creepy, to be honest. I mean, I've laid awake at nights earlier this week just wondering what the hell is going on and how weird it is that I'm doing this and how creepy it is that these numbers are following me around. I don't know. It's like we're all computer programs. And it's a little unsettling. And that's why I'm sometimes shy to talk about this with people in real life, because I don't want to freak them out. I feel like it's going to sometimes mess with certain people, and I think it does. So I just wanted to point this organic side of the Matrix out. And The Matrix, the movie, it couldn't be more perfectly aligned, I don't think. Anyway, we were talking about Kate Spade here. And what I focused on mostly in regards to this death is how it was built around the number 45. The word fashion in single reduction equals 45. And the word designer, she was a fashion designer. Designer equals 45 reduction and reverse reduction. Her last name was Spade, which equals 45 in the alphabetic order. She died on June 5th. June 5th equals 45 reduction and 45 reverse reduction. And she died at the age of 55, which equals 45 in reverse full reduction. Even 45 sums to itself. Her full name was Catherine Noel Spade. And in Jewish gematria, this sums to 533, which is the same as lunar eclipse. And she died 4 months, 5 days after the January total lunar eclipse. Her name in English gematria sums to 713, which is the same as total eclipse, 713. In the reduction method, her name sums to 83, which is total eclipse and solar eclipse in Hebrew. It's also the reverse value of murder. This one is so coded, it's just wild. Earlier I talked about how Springfield, Minnesota equaled 895 in that fake news story about the woman with the obituary. Catherine Noel Brosnahan equals 895 in that same method. And this is the Jewish gematria of 33. 33 equaling 895. Interesting that Brosnahan equals 151, just like Jesus Christ in ordinal, 151. And just to top it off, the name Catherine Brosnahan, her birth name, sums to 303, which is the same as crucifixion of Jesus Christ, 303 alphabetic order, and in the Jewish method, 303. So this was all related to these total lunar and solar eclipses. Of course, the word eclipse equals 33. 33 equals 156, which is the Hebrew value of the word eclipse. And here, Kate Spade died on the 156th day of the year in New York, New York, which equals 156. I don't want to go through all of these because a lot of it's just a bunch of number muttering. I'd rather people see the live stream that I put out that kind of ties this in together with the moon rituals in my life and, with people getting injured in sports games. If there's anything interesting about this, though, I want to point out that she died at the age of 20,252 days old. The term fashion designer equals 252 as well. Wow. And how about this? We keep talking about sacrifice summing to 73 and ritual sacrifice summing to 73 in reduction. And Kate Spade died 70 months, 3 days before the second Great American Total Solar Eclipse. She also died 7 weeks, 3 days before the next total lunar eclipse. So that definitely looks significant as well. And again, this woman was completely coded by the numbers. And what's so interesting about it is it's not just her name. It's her job title as well. And I just said this a few weeks ago. If you throw someone's job title, what they're known for, in front of their name, you're going to come up with all sorts of fascinating numbers. And nothing could be more true than the example of fashion designer Kate Spade. And I spend a lot of time here talking about the metonic cycle, of the moon, which is a period of 19 years and 235 synodic months. This syncs up just within a few hours of each other. Well, fashion designer Kate Spade equals 109, like 19. And in the alphabetic order, it's 235, like the number of lunar phases. In Jewish gematria, her name sums to 720, and that's the date of the moon landing. 235 days on a calendar is 7 months and 20 days. So another interesting thing before I look at Andrew Spade is that Andrew Spade, her husband, was David Spade's brother. And David Spade, a famous comedian from the 90s, spent some time on Saturday Night Live, as well as a lot of movies. And David Spade, he has this birthday of July 22nd, which is, 722, 227. We talk about this and how it relates to the mathematics of the circle. 22 divided by 7, summing to 314 alphabetic order. Well, if you divide 7 by 22, you get 0.318. And measuring from his 722 birthday to the date that Kate Spade died was 318 days. So that's going to wrap it up on the main numerology of her death. But what really blew me away is that a couple days later, they had this story of Kate Spade's husband, Andrew Spade, finally leaving the apartment. And as you can see in the picture here, on YouTube anyway, Andrew Spade was wearing a mouse mask. And I was like, what in the world is this? A grieving husband just days after his wife commits suicide leaves the house wearing a goofy mouse mask. I mean, this is pretty bizarre, and even the mainstream media agreed. Bizarre mouse mask. So what the hell is going on here? Well, when I started talking about the death of Kate Spade, I mentioned how this was all about the number 45 and how this ties into the lunar eclipse. Well, check this out. In the language of Gematria, using single reduction, mouse mask equals 45. This mouse was named Bernard, and it comes from the movie The Rescuers. Bob Newhart voiced Bernard in that film. Bob Newhart equals 45. The film The Rescuers has a release date of June 22nd, 1977. And if you measure from that date to the date that he emerged with the mouse mask, it was 40 years and 50 weeks exactly for yet another 45. So I don't know who these fucking people try to think they're kidding here, but I mean, there's just no way. Like, you know, if his wife is really dead, if she was really murdered, would he be willingly participating in something like this? You know what I mean? So this is why I'm kind of leaning towards more the fact that these things are hoaxes, that these people are flying away and leaving the country or something. It just doesn't make sense, you know? Another couple things I want to point out, too, about the Rescuers. Bob Newhart, who voiced that mouse's voice in the movie, he's currently 88 years old. The 88th prime number is 457, and the Rescuers equals 457. Also, the Rescuers equals 666. Remember, Kate Spade died on the 156th day of the year. That was the same day that the Star-Spangled Banner was in the news. Star-Spangled Banner equals 666. And again, 666, 156, she died on the 156th day of the year. The Rescuers equals 156 in reverse. So this is the kind of news story that should wake some people up, right? I mean, they're watching the news, they're thinking it's real, they hear about this suspicious death, and then this guy comes out wearing a fucking mouse mask? Who does this shit? This is not normal human behavior, people. You know, my brother, for instance, my eldest brother, he lost his wife from cancer at the age of 37. He didn't come out of his apartment wearing some fucking mouse mask. Granted, there's no paparazzi waiting for him, but this isn't what he would have done, you know? It's just, it's insane. So, hopefully that explains that. I think we also covered the death of Anthony Bourdain at pretty great length. I guess if there's anything to take away from this, it's the number 119, right? Suicide equals 119. Anthony Michael Bourdain equals 119. We're also going to look at how this death and the numerology of it ties into Robin Williams' death from 2014. We'll do a little history by the numbers at the end of the podcast. Anyways, this guy's show was named Parts Unknown. And let's see. Where did I mess this up? Parts Unknown equals 186 in the alphabetic order. The 186th prime is 1109. The season premiere of this last season, season 10, this aired on the 119th day of the year, April 29th. And it was called West Virginia. West Virginia equals 156th. And again, the 156th prime number is 911. $911, by the way, is the satanic gematria value of ritual human sacrifice, 911. So the word death equals 23 in septenary. Chef Anthony Bourdain equals 203 ordinal, and he died 2 weeks, 3 days before his birthday. CNN's headline sums to 2003, just for good measure. The date he died had 23 and 32 numerology. And his full name was Anthony Michael Bourdain, which sums to 232. When he died, he was exactly 3,000, not exactly, but he was 3,232 weeks old. As far as these sacrifice numbers, 73, right? Anthony Bourdain equals 73 in reduction. And the full name of his show, Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown, sums to 367, which is the 73rd prime number. You also get a 730 in Frank Baconus Gematria with capital letters. In standard reduction, murder equals 34. And the reason this is interesting here is because Anthony equals 34. So does his nickname, Tony, 34. He was born on a date with 34 numerology. The 34th prime number is 139. The last show he hosted before Parts Unknown was called The Layover, which sums to 139. And his current show is produced by 0.0 Production, which sums to 139 reduction. The final episode of Parts Unknown that'll be airing is called Cajun Mardi Gras, which sums to 139, and that'll air on a date with 34 numerology. CNN's headline, CNN's Anthony Bourdain dead at 61. That also sums to 139 in reverse reduction. Interesting that the last episode of Parts Unknown will be airing on June 17th, which is written 6/17, and Parts Unknown in prime numbers equals 617. I also wanted to mention, too, 0.0 Production, the name of the company that produces this series. Using the alphabetic order, 0.0 Production equals 337. And 337 is the 68th prime number. This guy died on June 8th, written 6/8. They said he died of suicide, 68. This date is also written 8/6. Chef equals 86 in the reverse alphabetic order. Suicide by hanging equals 86, reverse reduction, which is the same as blood sacrifice. Perhaps the most interesting thing that hasn't been mentioned yet about this whole thing is his Jewish gematria. And we know Jewish is super significant. It's almost never ignored, it seems, right? Well, in Jewish gematria, Anthony Bourdain equals 1,025. And this is a lot like the number 125. The last episode that aired before he died is called Hong Kong, which sums to 125. Hong Kong also summing to 125 in the Kabbalah, which is the same as sacrifice. And 125 has a prime factorization of 5 times 5 times 5. And if you measure from the date that Parts Unknown first aired to the date that he died, it was exactly 5 years and 55 days. And for the record, thanks to a commenter whose name's slipping my mind now, but he mentioned that Kate Spade was 55 years and 5 months old when she died, and that's true. She wasn't exactly that age, but she was 55 years and 5 days. And her death was announced just a couple days before Anthony Bourdain. So yeah, I got a lot more information on this one. Please check my post out. And if you missed earlier in the podcast, I talk about how this death was related to an episode of Batman from 1966. Sound crazy? It should, but that's what the mainstream media is doing. They're completely out of their fucking minds. All right, so with that out of the way, we're going to talk about this Mandarin Oriental Hotel fire. And this is another event I do have a video on, but I wanted to make sure to include it in the podcast, particularly for the overwhelmingly obvious gematria that was used in this ritual. So whenever you have some sort of disaster taking place, you always want to measure to the local politicians, the dates that they took office. And in this case, London, England, you measure to the date that Mayor Sadiq Khan took office, also the date that Theresa May, the Prime Minister, took office. Never mind the Queen, the royal family, forget about all that. We're looking at the people who are actually doing things, right? Or so we're told. Well, if you measure from the date that Sadiq Khan took office, he first stepped foot in the door on May 9th, 2016. That was exactly 2 years and 28 days before the fire at Mandarin Oriental Hotel. And using the alphabetic order, Mandarin Oriental Hotel equals 228. In Jewish Gematria, Mandarin Oriental Hotel equals 693. And if you instead measure to the date that Theresa May took office, which was July 13th, 2016, it's been exactly 693 days. And no, it's not coincidence. This is how these rituals are often structured. Something that stuck out to me about the Gematria of Mandarin Oriental Hotel was its value in trigonal, because here it matches the same value as Society of Jesus, 1733. 1733 is the 270th prime number. The Society of Jesus was founded on the 270th day of the year, and their motto, for the greater glory of God, sums to 270. So this stuck out right away. Now, if you measure from the fire to the Jesuit order anniversary, it was 3 months and 21 days. London, England equals 321, and that was the location of the fire. Mandarin Oriental Hotel fire, if you want to add that at the end of it, in English extended gematria, it sums to 1103. It was also 113 days to the Jesuit order's anniversary. The date is June 6th. June 6th equals 113. This is the mainstream's number of deception. And there was a celebrity involved in this story. It was Robbie Williams. Robbie Williams is a singer who previously released music that was related to other false flags. He had a song called Road to Mandalay. Also another song called Me and My Monkey, where he talks about taking a gun to the 33rd floor of the Mandalay Bay. So this guy is clearly connected to the part of the industry that's involved with the Cabal and numerology. So Robbie Williams was used for this news story, and he was 113 days after his birthday. So again, his numbers fit in perfectly. Another thing I want to point out, Robert Williams, if you write out Robert, it sums to 666, Satanic Gematria. In English extended, his name sums to 1166. This fire was on the date 6/6. 66 is the 11th triangular number, so he's got, a connection to the date in his name Gematria as well. In the Kabbalah, Robbie Williams equals 187, very significant number as we've been covering. This is the same as the town in which this hotel is in, which is Knightsbridge. It's in the Knightsbridge section of London. And we were talking about how this is all about the Society of Jesus. Society of Jesus equals 187. This ritual was related to the Grenfell Tower fire from last year on June 14th. They occurred 357 days apart. The word Freemason equals 357. In this same method, Grenfell equals 223, which is a very Masonic number, 223. And remember, this is the BBC that's headquartered in London reporting on this. BBC 223. It's pretty easy to see. But what really ties this all in is that Grenfell equals 511 in trigonal, which is the same as Saturn in Jewish Gematria. And here we have a fire in Knightsbridge. Knightsbridge equals 511 in English Gematria. In reduction, 511 equals 51. These two fires exactly 51 weeks apart. Also, check out the address of this hotel, 66 Knightsbridge, and the fire was on the date 6/6. The 66th prime number is 317, and Saturn equals 317 in primes. So, in the Grenfell fire, by the way, that was on the date that Saturn came into opposition with the sun, which happens every 54 weeks. And the fire started on the 54th minute of the day. So there's a lot more here pointing at numbers of masonry and Masonic involvement. And it's not hard to see how they could have set this up, because there was a multi-million pound renovation that was going on in this hotel just a couple months before the fire. And, you know, think about how 9/11, there was some humongous renovation going on with the elevators in the weeks leading up to 9/11. And then there was, you know, the explosion bringing the towers down. Probably the same thing here. You know, you set up some materials that start on fire, make sure the blaze can be controlled, which is probably part of the goal. And I don't think anybody was injured or died in this story. So it just seems to be another ritual done by the numbers. All right, so we talked a little bit about Robbie Williams, and maybe there's something to this, right? I mean, the same week as this fire, we're getting these two deaths by suicide, by hanging. Well, if you recall, in the year 2014, Robin Williams died of a hanging, suicide. So, you know, it's funny, I put this story right afterwards. It didn't even cross my mind, but this probably is connected somehow. I think the parallels are pretty easy to see. Just a little bit ago, we talked about Anthony Michael Bourdain, and his name summing to 232. He died on a date with 23 and 32 numerology, 2 weeks and 3 days before his birthday. Well, look at how old Robin Williams was when he died. He was 23,032 days old. Are you fucking kidding me? That's crazy. As far as the 32 goes, the word suicide equals 320 in Jewish Gematria. So this is probably why we see that. And his full name, Robin McLaurin Williams, equals 320 in reverse ordinal. How strange is that? Robin Williams, his full name equals suicide, just like Anthony Michael Bourdain sums to 119, which is the same as suicide, 119. So this is what I'm saying. I mean, these people appear to be... I don't know how strong the organic matrix is. I know it's very strong, but does everyone who commits suicide really have matching gematria with suicide? That seems out of control. So that's why I think this death, too, might also be some total fakery. As far as this 232 goes, his wife said that the reason he committed suicide was because of pain he was experiencing from Lewy body disease. Lewy body disease also equals 232 in the reverse order. And this has more interesting numbers, as we'll see. So Robin McLaurin Williams, you know, he's got this extra capital letter in his middle name, McLaurin. Well, in Francis Bacon Gematria with capital letters, this means his name sums to 351. 351 is the gematria of blood sacrifice in prime numbers. If you add every number up 1 through 26, it sums to 351, and he died on a date with a life lesson number of 26. In satanic gematria, blood sacrifice equals 611. In the same method, Robin Williams equals 611. And think about how this number reflects a 119 or a 911, right? If you flip it upside down, you get a 119. In the same method, ritual human sacrifice equals 911. And as I continue to say, so many of these celebrity deaths are synced up with the total solar eclipses, especially the ones going over the United States. And measuring from the date of his death to the date of the Great American Eclipse of 2017 is 1,106 days. This is an upside down 9/11 with the zero dropped. the cause of death they gave us was asphyxiation due to suicide, which is a really weird way of phrasing it. And in reduction, asphyxiation due to suicide equals 116, dying 1,106 days before the eclipse, and 116 weeks after this Family Guy episode aired, in which Peter kept trying to commit suicide, but Robin Williams was there to stop him. And, you know, people are questioning whether or not it's a coincidence that Family Guy aired this episode, right, with Robin Williams in it, and there's all these, you know, he saves Peter from 3 different methods of suicide. Well, run the numbers, and you'll see it definitely 100% is not a frickin' coincidence. And yeah, that episode 116 weeks before he died. How crazy is that? This measurement here, 116 weeks, is also 2 years, 11 weeks, and 6 days. So you get another 11/6, right? And here's where this stuff gets really even more interesting. If you measure from the date that the episode first aired to the date that he died, it was 2 years and 83 days. The moon equals 283 in Jewish Gematria. I also find it interesting that the number for dishonesty, you know, which equals 113 and 311, in the alphabetic order, it sums to 283. So I just wonder how much of this moon symbolism is also actually pointing us at hoaxes, you know? It makes you wonder, right? So the moon equals 283, this episode airing 2 years, 83 days before his death. Just want to touch on the numerology. Robin Williams has one daughter. He named her Zelda Ray. And, you know, she's got this Pixies shirt on, right? Pixies equals 611. Remember, this is the same number that Robin Williams shares with Blood Sacrifice in Satanic Gematria. So, you know, this is the kind of thing. Like, this picture's from 2011, right? Why haven't they updated this picture? That could have something to do with the shirt she's wearing. Anyway, using the alphabetic order, her full name is Zelda Ray Williams. Zelda Ray Williams equals 170. And that's the Gematria in Jewish of moon. Moon equals 170. In fact, the moon in Hebrew equals 223. Zelda in Satanic equals 223. And the date Robin Williams died, August 11th, was the 223rd day of the year. August 11th is also the date that leaves 142 days on the calendar. Using the standard alphabetic order, eclipse sacrifice equals 142. So does the term suicided, 142. Certainly seems like Robin Williams was suicided, or his character was anyways. And the location of where this suicide occurred was Paradise Cay, California, which is an unincorporated village, but look at the Gematria. 109 single reduction, 190 alphabetic order. Remember, there's 19 years in the Metonic cycle. And if you look at the cause of death, asphyxiation due to suicide, you get another 190 with all reduction exceptions applied. 19 years in the Metonic cycle. This syncs up with 235 lunar phases. And look at what time Robin Williams' death was announced. News of his death broke about 2350 Greenwich Mean Time, 235, 2350, and again, 235 lunar months in the Metonic cycle, and he died with numbers that all line up with this. Also interesting that Robin Williams was born in the year 51, and moon equals 51. Also interesting, too, that moon equals 15, and his highest grossing film that starred Robin Williams in a lead role was Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire equals 150, also 150 in KFW for a little double gematria action for you. And in standard Kabbalah, Mrs. Doubtfire, 190, another 190, just like 19. So we're looking at the number 911 and how this was tied in, right? 911, 11/6. It's pretty clear there was a pattern there. Well, 911 is the 156th prime number. Again, eclipse summing to 156 in Hebrew. And wouldn't you know it? Robin Williams equals 156 ordinal and Kabbalah. Different methods, same gematria. Of course, 156 tied to 33. 33 tied to ritual human sacrifice. In fact, I have a slide on this that I commonly show. Just kind of shows the pattern, how we get to human sacrifice from the number 33. It's really interesting. If you measure from the date that Robin Williams died, again measuring to the 2017 eclipse, you get 3 years and 10 days. Robin Williams has gematria of 310 in Frank Baconis. If you include the end date, this is 3 years, 11 days. And his daughter Zelda was 300 months, 11 days old when he died. So how strange is that? A family connection also connecting to the eclipse through the number 311. And 311 is connected to the moon because the moon is 3/11ths the width of the earth. Uh, 3 years, 10 days. If you look at the weeks also, it's 3 years, 1 week, 3 days. 31 times 3 is 93. And this is another number significant to Christianity, sacrifice, God's Son, Nazareth, crucifix, all of these words summing to 93. They say the sun is supposedly 93 million miles away. Robin Williams in English gematria sums to 930. The name of the Family Guy episode that he was in, Family Guy Viewer Mail 2, they threw a 2 at the end. That sums to 903 satanic gematria. And the disease he was suffering from was Lewy body, which sums to 93 in both Kabbalah methods. One final look at the full gematria of Robin McLaurin Williams. This sums to 103, full reduction, 13, the primary ritual and hoax code. And the episode of Family Guy Viewer Mail 2, also summing to 103. For the record, too, this is also 238 ordinal. This is the moon's average distance from the Earth in miles, 238,000 miles. But this 103 in single reduction, this is the same as ritual human sacrifice 103. And 13 in Jewish gematria is connected to sacrifice in Hebrew as well through the number 347. I know this is a lot of numbers. I apologize, but damn, this is coded, And I just looked at this morning for the first time and just trying to wrap my head around it. Finally, I just want to throw out the numerology. 17 and 44, the date he died. The word kill equaling 17 reduction and 44 ordinal. So it's just funny, and I wouldn't have made this connection had I not thought of it, but you had these 2 hangings this week, suicides by hanging, and then you also had Robbie Williams, the singer, in the news, and Robin Williams died of hanging in 2014. It's just, who knows what's going on, guys? It's really wild stuff. But let's see. I'm gonna jump in the YouTube chat. I love that you guys are just sharing numbers. If you have any questions that I wasn't able to see or get to, I apologize, but I'll certainly be doing some more live streams, probably during the week as well. So drop in, check those bad boys out, and maybe I'll do like a specific Q&A live stream at some point too. We'll see. So, all right. So that's going to do it for the 15th edition of the Gematrinator podcast. I want to thank everyone for listening today, and for everyone who listens and comes back every week, thank you very much. I certainly don't expect everybody to stick around with this research. It's like, a lot of people get it. The news is fake. The news is bullshit, and they move on with their lives, and I get that. That's cool. I do appreciate that people reaching out, helping with the work, trying to do their part to spread it. Because as long as we work and as long as we continue speaking, spreading the information, it's only going to get better, right? The awareness is only going to keep spreading. Maybe not as fast as we want, maybe not as much as we'd like, but it's still moving somewhere. You know, we're better off than we were a year ago. A year ago, we were better off than we were a year before that. So, you know, maybe we won't see the change that we're looking for in our lifetimes, but maybe this isn't our only life here either. Just food for thought, everyone. All right. Keep speaking and seeking that truth. God bless everyone. See ya.